Hi, folks. So, this is Kurt Vernadsky, publisher of Yankee T News, coming to you from an unspecified location. Might be my kitchen, I guess. We have a special situation tomorrow, makes it impossible for us to broadcast from our usual location. So, this is an experiment, if you will. And I'm going to talk as best I can about the various subjects of the day. Now, I just want to start by talking about the big theme, which goes by this title. Is Russia an extension of Putin's ego? Now, this is inspired by a commentary by a woman named Elvira Bary. She's a Russian writer. We'll get her link up somehow. And she dwelled a lot on the concept of how Russia is run by what she looks upon as a male alliance. But she does point out that this male alliance is as old as the human race. Okay, it's how men have worked together under all sorts of circumstances. And it's a line of thinking that really opens up a lot of points to consider. So the first is yes, especially since Putin has been running Russia for so long, yes, you can think of it as an extension of his own ego. And in that sense, it's almost like you want to say that he thinks of Russia as his personal piggy bank. And there might be some basis for that, because certainly when he started out, he didn't have nearly as much money as he has today. And we know that he's acquired it through various, quote, deals, uh, however they came about. Now, some may or may not remember there was something called the Panama Papers. This was an expose of rich, powerful, and famous people who had gotten secret offshore accounts to hide their wealth, some of it, all of it. Well, one of the people that got found out was, gee whiz, Queen Elizabeth. How do you like that? Well, Putin too. The Panama Papers revealed that even Putin had these offshore accounts were squirreling away his wealth. So you can look at that and say, you know what, this guy who runs this big, powerful country doesn't have so much faith in that country. In other words, he is so concerned with his own individual well being that he would resort to something like that in an effort to skirt the very laws that he's expected to enforce in his own country. That is the shared hypocrisy of all these people who were exposed by the Panama Papers. And they're not the only ones. Okay, so with that sort of as backdrop, the next part we want to talk about is how Russia's standing internationally. She points out that there is this general perception of what we'll call alpha nations like alpha dogs, beta nations like beta dogs, and gamma nations like gamma dogs in the bottom of the pecking order. So it's generally recognized that the United States would be considered the alpha nation, and then beta nations would include Russia and China, and maybe a couple others. Meantime, yet other countries would be in the gamma status. Now, she claims that the big problem that Putin has is he's trying to avoid humiliation. That's right, he needs to avoid humiliation. So, yes, okay, it happens. My wife just came in. Okay, all right. Wow, look at that one. That big. Here, let me show that off. Okay. Yep. So, and it's still warm. Look at how big that egg is. We got some chickens, let me tell you. Okay, so back to what I was saying about Russia. So their concern is to avoid humiliation. As a beta nation, they are in a precarious position. I want to add, by the way, I just want to remind you that Russia's GDP is on par with Italy. Okay, they're about, depending upon who you're looking at, they're anywhere, say, from 15th to 20th in international standing as far as GDP is concerned. So, and the other problem is the population of Italy is about 60 some million, but the population of Russia is around 150 million. Okay, yet here's a nation with 2.5 times the population with the same GDP as Italy, with a smaller population. All right, all of that said, for other reasons, Russia is still considered a beta nation. Now, if you take this perspective that Elvira Bary is offering, you find that there is this cusp on which Russia sits, and if she's right, Putin knows it very well. So we've seen NATO encroachment over the years, which is a what we call slow humiliation for Russia. At some point, Putin had to push back, and now we find that he's approaching the dangers of rapid humiliation. Now, even though he's slowly gaining ground in Ukraine, people are just looking at this and saying, dude, again, here's this nation that's got 150 million people, untold resources, and yet you cannot seem to um, take over a nation with, what is it, 1/3? I think that's about right. Maybe 1/4 of the population of Russia. So there is an element of humiliation there. This humiliation cannot stand. So Putin will have to, quote, do something. And that something would be to become more aggressive, perhaps. So the sense is that this is still unfolding, and there's also the argument that President Trump may not be looking at this from the right perspective with respect to negotiations. You know, he started out offering a vision of prosperity for Russia if they could just come to terms with Ukraine, and that is just, it doesn't work for him, as we're eventually figuring out. So I would say that President Trump is still trying to figure out which buttons to push with respect to Putin. Anyway, so I'm going to let that one go for now, and I just need to jump to these other things, and then that'll be the finish of this little broadcast. This is interesting for people who like quantum physics. I want you to stay tuned because there's the concept of entanglement. Some of you may be aware of. It's a kind of a complicated idea, but what we're finding is there's a slow, inexorable progress towards the concept of teleportation. So I believe it was Oxford that reported the ability to achieve teleportation between, hold on to your hats, two quantum computers. Who knew? So quantum computers may actually become the teleportation units in Star Wars, in Star Trek. Anyway, so that's important. I want you to keep that in mind. We'll have that link up. Now, this is an editorial comment on my part. I am not quite so sure that stripping citizenship from naturalized citizens and then deporting them is such a good idea. Great. They may have a criminal record, but if they've paid their debt to society, I'm not sure why this is being done. It does concern me. Again, we have the link up. I want you to read it. Give me your feedback. So then there's another article that was interesting. It's just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, what fools we be. Okay, I think a lot of us look back to that day when Richard Nixon held up that cup of tea and talked about the great relations they and China were going to have with each other. What a mistake that turned out to be. So you've had over time with Wall Street and others digging in on supporting China, stripping out manufacturing in our nation, something, frankly, in my opinion, for which they should never be forgiven. And so here you go. This is where we find ourselves. And the article is a review of that, which I think is worth seeing. Meantime, I continue to be amazed. So Mr. Zoran Mamdani continues to forge ahead. Now, this is in spite of the fact that it's been shown that he's lied about his application to Columbia University. He pulled a Elizabeth Warren trick, claiming he was both African and Asian, I believe. Anything but what he is in order to get into Columbia. So people are calling him out on that. There's some questions about some funding irregularities with his campaign. And the one that I think should alert most people of the fact that this person is a lot worse than we think is that he's been quite free about pulling quotes directly from Karl Marx, such as he expects that they will have to seize the means of production. Well, gee, why can't people wake up and realize what kind of a person this is? It's just incredible. Anyway, let me move on to another one that is big. So the link is that it's claimed that missing cosmic matter has been found. You know, there was a time where I think, what was it, 5% of the universe was considered known matter uh, and energy for the total universe. And it's since expanded as we've learned more about dark energy and dark matter, but there's still some problems. This article claims that those problems have been solved, so you might want to check that out. Ah, yes. So let's see what else. For what it's worth, so another article here that's from it's about the history of Rome. And anybody who digs into the history of Rome will know there was a period of time where they were taking in more and more non-Romans into their military and allowing, quote, non-Romans to become a more significant part of the government. And this did not work out well for them. Okay. And the argument is that there are lessons that we need to learn with respect to illegal aliens, with what the Roman Empire went through back then. So check it out. Now, there's another study here that's concerning from Yale University. Yes. So it's amazing to me how the story about COVID, even to this day, continues to change. We're finding now that the spike protein lasts longer than we thought. So originally, some of the speculation was that even if the spike protein gets into your genome at some point, it'll get kicked out after a year or so or become inactive in some form. Because just remember, genetic expression is a very complex process involving many steps. If any of those steps break down, then the expression stops. So perhaps there's some vain hope for that. But they are finding here that the spike protein continues to be manufactured in your body. Now, what they don't make clear here is that the way the mRNA was constructed for the spike protein, that it would produce what we'll call defective spike proteins. And just a one amino acid misplacement was enough to cause the ribosomes to produce a constant stream of mutated proteins, no two alike. Now, whether or not that in some fashion continue, if it's integrated into the genome, I have to look into that. But they've raised this as a concern, and I want to share that concern with you, so you can see how, at least check it out. All right. Now, the other part that's hard to understand here, again, we have these very different pictures about what's going on with Ukraine and Russia. You had the recent attack. I reported on it last week. It was on June 28th. Massive attack of drones and missiles, not only on Kiev, but all throughout Ukraine. So meantime, you have all these other little stories where Ukraine makes another surprise attack on somebody. And then they pinned down 50,000 troops. And then there's a case where they had found a headquarters for Russia officers and totally destroyed the headquarters, right? In the meantime, you still have claims of more territory being taken by the Russians. So it's it's a mess. And you have Putin saying, peace, not interested. So then, let's see, there's just one other, so this last thing I want to mention. All right, Act Blue is in trouble. I don't know if you know about Act Blue, but there's this concept called smurfing, where what they have done is they've taken money, donated dark money, and then what they do is they create fake donations to take a person who's made several donations, and now they suddenly add more. So say it's five, all of a sudden now it's 500 donations that this person made. This is what's called smurfing. Well, finally, it looks like Act Blue is going to have to go to trial for this, what they've done. On this, I am most glad and relieved. And I may do a second thing here because I still need to talk to you about food additives, in particular BHT and BHA. Just to mention it quickly, these are food preservatives, and they preserve freshness. And there's a claim that they are carcinogens, yet they've been in the American food supply. And what's the other problem with these two characters? Oh, something that's a surprise, although there was no follow-up to this. There was a claim that BHA may actually retard Alzheimer's, which is a surprise. Pickles the brain, what can I say? All right, well, that's it for now, guys, and expect more. All right, bye.